remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
America's Evil Genius, Travis Cook, back with you once again, and with one of our videos that we haven't done a whole lot of in quite a while. We've been so focused on our radio show over on truthfrequencyradio.com, 90.7 FM in Denver, every Tuesday afternoon. We've been so focused and working so hard on that some of the videos we used to do on YouTube have kind of gone by the wayside. We haven't done many of those. But I've had a lot of people ask me on social media and even come up to me personally and ask, hey, why don't you do those videos anymore? Indicated that he'd really like to see some of those. So we're going to try and put a few more of those out from time to time. Hopefully about one a week if we can succeed in being that aggressive with it. So we're going to start some of that today and go back on YouTube and do some of that while continuing to do the radio show. And we hope you check it out every Tuesday afternoon. truthfrequencyradio.com, 90.7 FM in Denver, Colorado. Every Tuesday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 to 2 p.m. if you're out there in Denver. What I wanted to talk about today was a little bit about the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, no doubt that unless you've been hiding under a rock for the last year, you know about the Black Lives Matter movement. Wherever you're at in America, wherever you're at in this great nation, you've heard of them, you're aware of them, you've seen them on camera, you've seen them on the news, you've seen them in the media. And certainly here where we do this show, in the St. Louis metro area, just a few miles from the epicenter of Ferguson, if you will, we are maybe a little bit more familiar with them, and we see them a little bit more on a daily basis than maybe most of you do. We're affected by what's going on over there in the protests and this kind of stuff a little bit more than the average bear is. Now, you and I have seen the Black Lives Matter movement, the protesters and so forth. We've seen them having been given a platform. We've seen them put their thoughts out there in the media ad nauseum over the last year. Basically, whenever they've jumped up and said something or done something, they've been out there in the media, and the media has given them carte blanche to say practically whatever they've wanted to. We really have not seen in the media a whole lot of pushback from the other side of the debate. That's what I'm here to provide you with today. I am going to take on the role, if you will. I'm going to take the burden, if you will, of speaking for the rest of society in retort to Black Lives Matter. And it's far more than just me speaking for white people. Really, what I think I'm speaking for here is not only white people, but Hispanic people, Asian people, males, females, even other black people, dare I say it, who disagree with the idea of protesting in favor of criminals or criticizing the police or trying to make the police have a far more difficult road than they already have to apprehend criminals. I'm speaking for, frankly, the rest of society. And yes, I think that does include a good number of African Americans who believe like we do. In fact, just today I saw a Rasmussen poll that showed that when blacks were asked to identify, to advocate for the phrase Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, 65% of the respondents selected All Lives Matter. Now, granted, that's one poll. One poll never tells the whole story, but it at least suggests that there's more than one view out there in the African American community, and I think that holds true for society. Now, let me take a moment to just kind of rehash for you what those of us in the rest of society are seeing when we hear from these Black Lives Matter folks, when we see these protests, these things that happen. Whether it's in Ferguson with Mike Brown, whether it's the Sam DuBose thing in Cincinnati, Sandra Bland down in Texas, or even just a couple of days ago here in the St. Louis area, we had another one of these thugs who pointed a stolen gun at a police officer and was shot by the police officer, shot dead, and all of a sudden, all these protesters come out of the woodwork to complain about the police. Meanwhile, that same day in Ferguson, in a drive-by shooting, a 7-year-old girl, an innocent 7-year-old girl, was shot dead in her bedroom, and the protesters and the Black Lives Matter folks were conspicuous by their absence there. You see, that's what the rest of society is seeing. When these protesters come out of the woodwork, when these looters come out of the woodwork, when the Black Lives Matter folks come out of the woodwork, it always seems to be in defense of somebody who committed a crime. Mike Brown committed a crime by robbing that liquor store and going for that cop's gun. Sam DuBose committed crimes with the not having the license plate on the car. Sandra Bland committed crimes by not using the turn signal. And all of these major cases we see come out that seem to the protests seem to spring forth from them, all these protests seem to start with somebody, the alleged victim, breaking the law. That's what we're seeing. Now, there is certainly room for debate in some of the cases anyway, in terms of how egregious the law was that was broken, or in terms of the response to the actions of the person when confronting the police in a belligerent way, as always seems to happen in these cases. There's some room for debate there, I know, but the bottom line is every one of these cases seems to start with the alleged victim breaking the law. That's without dispute. Well, that's what we in the rest of society are seeing. And we're noticing the trend. We're not seeing these cases be someone who was completely innocent, didn't break the law, and some racist police officer came up and got in their business and they ended up shooting him. We've yet to see that, at least in the high-profile cases that the Black Lives Matter folks have identified themselves with. And I think that's taken a toll. Because I look back 1 year ago when the Mike Brown stuff happened right here in St. Louis, and as I talked to just regular, ordinary people, white folks, Hispanic folks, all kinds of folks, men, women, whatever, people seem to be somewhat divided on what they thought of it. A lot of folks who move in my social circles initially thought, you know what, maybe there is some problematic things going on in Ferguson. Maybe this case is somewhat problematic. And I was never in that group, but there were others I associate with who were. But 1 year later, on the first anniversary of that incident, when we saw protesters going to Ferguson again, when we saw more looting, more violence in Ferguson on the 1 year anniversary, when we saw another situation where a thug pulled a gun, this is a different one than North St. Louis the other day, by the way, this keeps happening, where another thug pulled a gun on a police officer and got shot dead, and everybody starts looting, everybody starts breaking into stores, everybody starts throwing stuff at police, we see it again. I noticed that a lot of the same people I heard from last year that were willing to give the protesters the benefit of the doubt, willing to hear them out, I'm noticing now they're saying, okay, enough's enough. Really? You're doing this again? Seriously? I'm seeing a change in a lot of my fellow Americans who might have been open to at least listening to you before. When I go into social media, or even when I have face-to-face conversations with people, the overriding theme, no matter what a person's politics is, no matter whether they agree with me or disagree with me on other issues, or whether they're apolitical at all, seems to be, okay, come on, will you stop breaking the law? See, the lesson for you Black Lives Matter folks seems to be this. If you truly want to make change in your communities, if you truly want positive change, whatever you might define that as, if you truly want positive change to spring forth from this, if you truly want us to work with you, then you're going to need to stop attacking police, physically and rhetorically. You're going to have to stop destroying property. You're going to have to stop blocking streets and otherwise interfering with our lives and how we go about our business. I mean, we had a situation the other day during that 1 year anniversary where a bunch of protesters blocked one of the major bridges between St. Louis and St. Charles County over the Missouri River. And we even had this humorous incident where someone with their car broke through the barricade because they'd had enough about it. And as humorous as that is, I want you to stop and think. Those of you who protested, did you really think that blocking that roadway and causing all of these working class folks, many of them were white, but a lot of them were of multiple ethnicities and whomever, and blocking them from getting home, blocking them from picking up their kids, blocking them from having dinner with their families, and keeping them from doing that, and holding them on the roads in hot weather for a couple hours, did you really think that would make your cause more sympathetic to us? Really? No, it had just the opposite effect. People continued to enhance the way that they're vehemently against you now in mainstream society. Now contrast that. Contrast the rhetoric, contrast the violence, contrast the interference in our daily lives that we're seeing out of the Black Lives Matter folks. Contrast that to the followers of Martin Luther King in the 1960s. When you go back and look at the film clips of a Martin Luther King protest, you'll notice that everybody was well-dressed, everybody was orderly. Yes, they did their civil disobedience, but they didn't try to get in people's faces. They didn't try to encumber upon the daily lives of those who were not involved with what was going on, because they knew, and Martin Luther King knew, that he was going to need their support. And Martin Luther King, and he was very smart about this. He was a genius in this regard. He knew that if he could portray, and his followers could portray, that they were simply trying to live their lives as the rest of us were, that we were going to lend them our ears. And we did. History shows that that's exactly what happened. It worked. But we don't see the Black Lives Matter folks and the protesters in Ferguson today and wherever else doing the same thing. And so you're not getting that ear from us. You're not getting that cooperation from us because, quite frankly, we don't see that you're trying to assimilate into society. You appear to be trying to change society in the mechanism or in the way of those who would break the law and try to usurp society. Well, we're not going to go along with that. But the failure to show your cooperation with us simply reinforces the idea that your demands and your positions have no validity. Whether you want to believe that or not, that's the impression that we and the rest of society are getting from you right now. We're not taking your concerns and your grievances nearly as seriously as we were a year ago because of what we're actually seeing out of you and because of how you are so egregiously and aggressively stating your case in our face, spitting in police officers' faces, throwing frozen water bottles and Molotov cocktails at them, etc. And that's the dirty little secret, isn't it? The dirty little secret is that what you people are standing for really does not have any validity. Because what you're standing for are people who in every single case broke the law. Let's be clear. Let's be truthful. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's not try to be politically correct. If we are honest, most of the challenges that are faced in the urban community, the black community today, most of the challenges today are self-inflicted wounds. That was not the case 40 years ago, certainly was not the case 100 years ago, but in 2015, as we stand here today in the here and now, most of the issues seen in the black community are self-inflicted wounds. The lack of stable families, the violence, the crime, and the tolerance of crime that we see from protesters, etc. You've done that to yourselves. Not all black folks, of course, but those few who exist in those communities and who subscribe to this victimization theory. The kids born out of wedlock, that's on you. Nobody did that to you. Individually, those are your behaviors. Now, reduce those things. Reduce the crime within your communities. Reduce the tolerance of crime. Reduce the illegitimacy. You do those things, and the rest of us in society will be far more likely to engage with you. You're not going to get us to engage with you by storming stages at political rallies and trying to steal a microphone. Because if you keep doing that, you're going to get some security with some batons, with some guns or whatever answering you back. Bernie Sanders might not be able to afford a lot of security, but I can assure you Donald Trump can. And so can the rest of the Republican candidates if you even try that with us. But if you reduce the crime in your communities, which only you can do, if you reduce the tolerance for crime, if you reduce the lack of assimilation into society, if you reduce the aggressive attitudes you have towards mainstream society, then you're going to see, over time, far less police interaction with what all goes with it. You're going to see far less racial profiling, which I have a tendency to call reasonable profiling most of the time. You're going to see other people in society begin coming into your communities, patronizing your businesses, investing in your communities, etc. Because your communities will no longer be essentially flushing money down the toilet. We can go into your businesses and feel safe. And we will, I'm sure if you provide something that we wish to buy, and many of you will, we'll go down there and buy it. If you provide a business that is a good investment for us, a money-making opportunity, we'll invest in it because we know that there would be some degree of assurance that it could sprout forth a return on investment. You'll see more natural integration of your living spaces in your schools because the concerns that the rest of society has about the crime and the murders and the stealing and the rapes, etc., all of which exist in your communities in great numbers. You can't run from those facts. But all of those things will be minimized. When they're minimized, all of us will have far more incentive to live amongst each other. We won't need laws to tell us to do it. We won't need to be forced to do it. It will be in our best interest to do it. And it'll happen naturally. If that's what you want, if you want more integration of society, if you want people to live in better harmony together, if you want less animus between the cultures and the races, that's how you do it. You take care of your own house. You take care of your own problems, and you will see, just as many other ethnicities have seen over the years, that the rest of society will come knocking on your door. But on the other hand, if you simply want to complain, if you simply want to commit crimes without being held accountable for them, then your current actions will only strengthen the resolve of the rest of society to keep you from doing it. You may not realize it, but you're giving us the impression that you're trying to start a war. Not a discussion, not a philosophical debate, not even a political debate, a physical war. You don't want that. We don't want that. But you're going down that road. Folks, thank you once again for joining us. We're going to try and get more of these videos out more often. Join us on the radio or on the internet, truthfrequencyradio.com, 90.7 FM in Denver. You can find us on the TuneIn app every Tuesday afternoon, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, noon to 1 p.m. on the West Coast. This is America's Evil Genius, Travis Cook. We will see you next time.